Somebody requested a video on orchid care ages ago and I was waiting until this one was in full bloom, but then this one died. They simply couldn't sync up, and that's okay because I'll tell you what to do with the flower spike once they are done. First things first, when it comes to orchids, the species definitely matters. So there are 28,000 orchid species, which is a lot, and I think there's like 720 different genuses of them within that. It is a really big family. I think the second largest after, I want to say, daisies, but there are a lot of different types of orchids. This video is about the Phalaenopsis orchid, just the standard one that you can buy in a supermarket. This one I did buy in Tesco in the UK, and this one also, I believe, Tesco, for like a £5. I do think these plants are designed to be used kind of like a cut flower. We have them, the bloom will die after a few months, and then they're hoping that you'll throw it away and buy another one. Because one of the facts of keeping orchids is they do look quite boring for quite a lot of the time. If you care for them well, the flowers can last months, but yeah, you are basically looking after some quite dull green leaves for the rest of the time. Most of the orchids that you buy have been in cultivation for decades, so they are designed to they're not designed to live in homes, but they've been sort of cultivated so they are easy to care for, but again, also sort of disposable. So if you hear me say something and you're like, well, my orchid doesn't live like that and it's fine, that's fine as well, but this is like the lazy girl's guide to getting orchids to flower. And if you're new to houseplants, this is definitely the easiest way to care for orchids. You can keep other plants like this, but it suits orchids really, really well. Holding this is not convenient. So in the wild, Phalaenopsis orchids are epiphytes, so they never have any contact with the ground at all. This is not the same for a lot of other orchids. So as I said, there's like 72,000 different orchids, and they all have vastly different requirements. What makes them like an orchid is the similarities between them are they've got tiny seeds, they've got essentially a fancy petal, and they have like a certain type of leaf that like twists when it's opened. It's called like racupinate. I don't know what any of this means. We're talking about Phalaenopsis orchids. They are epiphytes. They grow in trees in tropical rainforests. You can commonly buy orchid bark to grow them in, and that's fine. So because they have essentially aerial roots, all their roots are aerial roots, they don't go in soil. You want something really airy. I actually take it one step further and don't keep them in any substrate at all. So I just keep my orchid like this in a vase. This was like £2.50 from Tesco. This is my pride and joy. The roots actually don't look great, and they just never really have. They're not like aesthetically pleasing, but that's kind of true of plants in the wild anyway. You'll also see these two leaves look great. These ones, they're old, they're sad. They're not like, as you can see, there are plenty of healthy roots. Like you can see, they're all like green. I've recently watered it. And the roots are growing, but these leaves, I think she's like, if you want a beautiful flower, we're making sacrifices, and these are the sacrifices. If you've never had success with orchids before, I highly recommend this route. Not only can you keep an eye on the roots, like I know they're not rotting because I can see them, but when I water, I literally just, when I'm watering my plants, which is sort of weekly, but it can be every 2 weeks, I just fill this with water at the start, like when I start watering. Then when I finish watering, I tip it out, and I usually tip it into like a self-watering pot as like a reservoir, and that works fine. It's usually, say, soaking for about half an hour. I have forgotten it and left it overnight, and it's been absolutely fine. You can keep them, you can like, the roots will turn into water roots, but to be honest, this is the easiest way I've found to keep them. You can still like stick a spike in and clip it up if you like that look. I tend to like rest it on my candlestick, so that's absolutely fine. I've used tap water, I've used aquarium water, I usually use nutrient water, which is just tap water with fertilizer in it. I don't know how important fertilizer is. I fertilise her sporadically. I've gone through phases of fertilising a lot and then barely any at all. I do think if you fertilise regularly, you can fertilise every time you water. I think that's what's contributed to this being such a big flower spike. But if you don't ever fertilise, it will still flower. They can get enough nutrients for flowering from just water. Like if you think about it, these in the wild would never encounter soil. They don't need this amount of flowers, they just need enough to be pollinated. But if we want this sort of I mean, this is extra. Just fertilise it often. I use the general hydroponics. You will need a hydroponic fertiliser. Will you? I actually don't think you would. I actually don't know. I use general hydroponics. So that is soil, substrate and watering. Yeah, weekly is fine. To be honest, if you keep it like this, you could probably water it every day as long as you tipped it out again. Like, you can't really overwater it because as long as the oxygen's getting to the roots, like, it's fine. When it comes to tap water, my general rule is that if you would happily drink it, your orchid will also happily drink it. If you drink filtered water, give your orchid filtered water. Don't go with distilled water. I don't know why. I just know that the National Orchid Association, they do not recommend filtered water, distilled water, so we're going to believe them. I am going to talk about the conditions that I keep my orchid in because I do think it's what's led to this situation. But as I say, orchids have lived in cultivation for a very, very long time. A lot of people keep them in a lot of different situations. So I feel braggy, but like mine is kept in sort of fairly ideal conditions, but they're not particularly special. So this sits on my coffee table so I don't forget about it. And it is, let's say, 4 feet from a massive window and it's south facing. So it does get bright light, but there's a few factors at play. So I've got a plant stand in front of the window which will filter the light, and I live in the north of England, so it's never going to be like really bright light compared to what you would get closer to the equator. But it gets a high volume of light for a large period of the day. If you think about where they would live in the wild, so they would be under the rainforest canopy but quite high up, so they will get decent light. This is also a warm room because it's south facing and has a massive window. And temperature really does impact how well plants grow. It won't stop plants growing, but they will grow faster and bigger and probably better flowers if they are kept warm. It isn't consistently warm. In winter it does get really cold at night. Like, our heating only comes on when it's 12 degrees because I'm tight. But in the summer, obviously it doesn't really get that cold, so that's fine. When I was first into houseplants and I got an orchid and obviously killed it, I was reading about how the professional orchid growers do all sorts of like lowering the temperature and keeping them in the dark to encourage blooms. I've not done anything like that, but obviously in winter here it's dark, we don't get a lot of light and it does get colder, so that might have impacted it. I really don't know, but if you live in the UK you don't need to do anything. The natural cycles of the light will do its thing. And another thing about orchids, specifically Phalaenopsis, I have no idea if I'm saying that right. The roots do photosynthesize, so they're green. I don't know how important they are compared to the leaves. I have no idea, but as I say, because I keep mine in glass, they can photosynthesize, and the glass probably does keep them a little bit warmer. In terms of humidity, this room is inconsistent. So yeah, because they've been kept in cultivation for so long, I don't think humidity has that big of an impact. If you're into rare plants, you will especially aroids, you'll sort of notice when plants first come into fashion and they are very sort of new, they tend to require high humidity. The one that always springs to mind is the Monstera obliqua. When they were first on the market, if they didn't have high humidity, they wouldn't grow any leaves. They would literally just like vine. But now you can keep them in ambient humidity, and it's just because they've been in tissue culture and they can find, like, it's just natural selection. Well, not natural selection, I suppose, unnatural selection, but the growers pick the best ones to culture and clone. And it's the same with Phalaenopsis. They have been bred to be kept in houses. So the humidity here is anywhere from like 25% and it gets up to, so now it's 66, which is the highest I've ever seen it. But it goes up and down throughout the day and like throughout the year. So I wouldn't, unless you have super low humidity, like under 25%, I really wouldn't worry about it. I also have this little one. Now, I don't know, sorry, that's a really horrible noise. This I also got from Tesco, and I keep it in the same way. It's very dry. Oh God. I think it's a just like the same species but like a dwarf variety. As you can see, the flowers are spent on this one. This one I keep in equally good light, but it's like an east facing window and it's definitely colder, but I keep it in this cloche because it's cute. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you what I do when, oh look, there's a new leaf, when these are spent. Now there's loads of different, there's not loads of different things, there's two different things you can do. So what you can do is just chop off. If you look along the stem, you can see there's like different nodes. It just looks like a joint on the flower spike. What you can do is just cut between, anywhere between two of the joints closest to the flower. So just do that. And then what will probably happen is you will get a smaller flower come here. It might happen, it might not. It will depend on the reserves that the plant has. So if you've been fertilizing it regularly and taking really good care of it, you'll probably get another flower. Now it probably won't flower as well. If you had a big flower last time, you might just get a little one. It just seems to depend on like the plant, the genes of the plant itself, the conditions it's in. You just sort of have to see. But what sort of professional orchid growers say you should do is cut it off right at the base. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut one at the base and one here, and we'll see if the next flower spike that grows, I don't know what I'm seeing, I'm just cutting one off at the bottom and one like that, and we'll see if it grows another one from this, or if it grows from, I don't know, this is just what I'm doing. So I've just cut that so it's as low as it can go, and then it'll just go back in here. This one actually does need watering. You can see this one I've not had as long as the other one. I've only had it, I think I got it in winter, like last winter. And you can see it's still got some of the moss on the roots. That's fine, it really doesn't matter. I don't leave it in water for long enough for that to be an issue. You'll also notice these like weird stringy things. This is, so when I got this, it was on sale. It was like a £5 because it had root rot, and basically like the outside of the root will come off, and I leave this inside bit until, I mean these are ready to come off, these aren't coming back from the dead, but sometimes they can produce nutrients. I've had it where like the middle bit sort of rotted and I've pulled off the outside, but I'll show you. You have to go back in here. Come on. Cute. Trying to find an example. Well, sometimes here, like the roots break and I can pull this bit off, like this section wants to come off, but this section might not, although it looks like it all wants to come off. And you can just sort of pull off the outer sheath and there'll be enough nutrients can travel along like the stringy bit to stop this bit from dying. The roots on this one go through phases of looking fine and looking awful, and at the moment some of them look awful and like some of them look really healthy, and I think it's probably because it's busy with this. So it's like, I don't care about the roots. And also there's a leaf here that has gone yellow. This is that, like, they tend to, you'll lose the bottom leaves first. I'll just wait for it to drop off by itself. You can pull them off, but when they're yellowing like this, they're pulling all the nutrient out of the leaf and then they'll sort of reuse it. So you can see where the old flower spikes have been. So this was the first one. Yeah, so that was the first one here, and then you get like a new flower spike coming between each leaf and they just go up in sequence. So the next one will come out here, and you can actually see there's a split in the leaf sheath, and I think we are due for another flower spike. And you might be like, that's very exciting because you're not going to have a time without flowers, but actually on this one, I think the flower spike started last year and it grew one, and I was so excited, there was buds on it, and then it like branched off. It grew this branch here and then it branched off here, and then they filled it with buds, and I basically holding my breath like, if all these buds come out it will look incredible, and they did. But it took its time like growing them all, and then you get the flowers come out one by one. So I'm hoping that they will also, like, when they die off, they'll die off one by one, so that'll last a long time. And ideally, as I say, this flower spike will be out, but they do take a while. I'll just give you a closer look at these leaves. They do look really wrinkly and it does look like it's struggling to get water to them. I can see that it's got roots and it's got this flower, so I'm not worried that the plant is ill. I just think maybe it's sort of lost a bit of confidence in its leaves. This probably didn't help. I accidentally ripped it when it was growing and it's done really well. Like, you'd think that would have more of an impact on it, but apparently not. What usually happens is you get a flower spike, or in my experience, flower spike, leaf, flower spike. But I think we're now doing flower spike because I can't see a single hint of a leaf. Right, we've done substrate, we've done fertilizer, we've done light, we've done humidity, we've done temperature. I think that's it. It's really not actually that complicated. You just sort of have to realise that at some point it's going to look quite boring. But you can't like hide it away in a cupboard whilst it's being boring, because then it won't ever be interesting again. Okay, I'm not very good at talking today, so I'll just leave it there. If you have any questions, do let me know. I am not an orchid expert by any means. This is just the work this takes, which is like, I don't need to think about it because I just, every week, you can literally just, you can get, if you want to get into plants, get an orchid, take everything off the roots, put it in a vase, £2.50, £2.49 from Tesco. And then every week, on a Saturday, fill it up with tap water, and then tip it out after 20 minutes. That's it. You will get a flower. It will happen if you keep it in a nice bright spot that's sort of quite warm. In winter, they do fine in the cold, like totally fine. Obviously, like, don't put it outside and let the frost on it, and then in summer, you get a beautiful flower. So yeah, I hope this was useful, and I will see you next time. Bye. Oh, if you watched my maiden hair fern video, I repotted it. Did I repot it before the video? I think I repotted it just before the video. It is doing so well. So well. But that isn't what this video is about. So I'll stop bragging and let you go. Bye.